All information in this program is known to be accurate at the time of recording. Any commentary by the host is for discussion purposes only. Anyone labeled a person of interest by the host or family has not been charged with a crime. All suspects charged with crimes related or unrelated to a case covered are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Opinions and views expressed by the host do not represent views of the families or sponsors of this program. Coming up on this week's Grimm Media News, search conducted in the Ira Briscoe case, but more needs to be done. Teamwork between volunteers and Native American tribes shows there is hope that searches can be done. Someone also trying to silence information in the James Escalante case. This and what's on tap with the Grimm Truth Podcast and the Weekly Remind coming up. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, welcome to this week's edition of Grimm Media News. I'm your host, Steve Stone. First on tap is the story related to the Ira Briscoe case, where there has been movement and updates in the case. Ira Briscoe and the family have worked tirelessly to try to get a search conducted around, especially where the residents where Ira and Lyman Little were living at prior to their disappearance. And last week, I can confirm that there was a search conducted with cadaver dogs in and around the residents in that area. Unfortunately, there were no evidence. The dogs didn't hit on anything. And unfortunately, having the dogs out there was a good thing, but not finding anything obviously was a big letdown to the family. Now, we can't stop here in Ira's case. There has to be more places that we can get the authorities and the search organizations to kind of pinpoint on with cooperation. But in order to do that, we need your help, and we need those closest to the case that may know something to come forward and give us these locations that can help Ira's family conduct more searches. Again, striking while the iron's hot is very important in this case, because now that law enforcement is willing to work with EquiSearch and do these searches for any, whether it be evidence or any whereabouts of a location to look for Ira and Lyman are very important. So if anybody can come forward with that information, you can contact the Howell County Sheriff's Office at 417-256-2544. Again, that's 417-256-2544. You can also email me, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. Always, if you need to, you can remain anonymous, but we need your help in making sure that this isn't the only search that's conducted for Ira and Lyman. Lastly, I did have the opportunity to speak with Ira's mom, and we would ask that you just send prayers their way. They are constantly on a roller coaster when it comes to what's going on. They do want answers. They're doing everything humanly possible to be engaged, not only with law enforcement, but with people that may know something. So, and just, if you can, just send them prayers and well wishes. They need all the positive thoughts that they can get. And as I told Mrs. Briscoe last night, that when people get tired and they can't move on and they can't weather the storm, there's always people here to help. That's what we're here to do. And we know that we have, there's 3,000 people in our group and other organizations that are willing to help if the Briscoes need people to lean on. And I did tell them that they could lean on us. And as more information comes forward, if there's any help that we can be a help for the family, a voice for the family, a voice for Ira, a voice for Lyman, to get them fixed, to get this fixed and get them found or information found. Again, we want to help them. I also want to touch base on a couple of things. There was a story that KY3 did, where the Howell County Sheriff's Office said people were arrested um, in connection with the case of Ira Briscoe. I just want to say that there have been no arrests um, as far as anyone charged with the disappearance and or homicide of Ira Briscoe and Lyman Little. Now, if these are arrests that were unrelated in connection with when they were talking to people about Ira's cases, but there has been no one charged in any with any crime related to Ira or Lyman. So I wanted to clear that up. Moving forward, um, over the weekend there was a search conducted for Michael Senote Jr. Now, we have not covered this case on the podcast. We have shared this flyer. This young man went missing in the West Kingston, Rhode Island area, the Great Swamp. And part of the Great Swamp area is part of the Nakaset Indian tribal land. And that's what they prefer to be called, by the way. I'm not trying to be politically incorrect, but they are called the Nakaset Indian tribe. They, a lot of teamwork came together over the weekend where a search was conducted for Michael Senote Jr. in that area. There were some things that volunteers located that they were able to photograph and send in to the family to see if it belonged to Michael. Now, none of these items seem to be related, but they were able to search a good portion, and more searches are going to happen in the future. But this was a great first step in looking for Michael Senote Jr. and wonderful collaboration between the Indian tribe and authorities and volunteers working together to find this young man and to find out what may have happened to him, whether he met, whether it was environmental conditions, whether it was foul play, and none of this we know, but it's a great collaboration. And this is the collaboration that we are fighting for in other cases, especially in the case of Jesse Conger, where he is also, his family is in a particular battle with getting the Native American tribe there to help do searches. And there's been kind of a gridlock there. And with Michael Senote Jr.'s case, we can see that it is possible to work together with the sovereignty of a Native American tribe, like the one in West Kingston, Rhode Island, and their willingness to help. So bridges can be built. These people are very proud people, but they're willing to let others go on and search. And I hope that this can be a turning point for other cases, especially like the case of Jesse Conger, where we haven't had that type of breakthrough yet. And it just goes to show you that this can be done, and it's something that we hopefully we can have continue on in the future. So we want to thank those volunteers in Michael Senote's case, Michael Senote Jr.'s case. Thank them for their commitment, their hard work, and their time. If anybody has any information on the whereabouts of Michael Senote Jr., he went missing at the age of 22. He would be 24 today. He went missing June 13th of 2019. He's a white male, brown hair, brown eyes, 5'11". If you have any information, please contact the North Kingston Police at 401-294-3316. Again, that's 401-294-3316. That's also extension 8211. And again, it was a wonderful turnout from what I hear. And there was a lot of great teamwork. Everybody worked together. And again, this is something that hopefully can be repeated in future cases, not just in Michael Senote Jr.'s case, but in others as well. And we hope that we can report that as well. Next up is going to be the James Escalante case. And I have to be really careful here when speaking about this. Over the weekend, I talked to Heather Escalante, and Heather has been she's been the lead on James Escalante's case. Now, for those of you that don't know, James Escalante was missing, and his remains were found. And this went from a missing persons case to a homicide investigation. Heather has been in the not only has she been the advocate for James, she has been the lead detective in his case, because there hasn't been a lot of movement in James's case. There have been people that we have mentioned before on the weekly remind that are persons of interest, whether the law enforcement hasn't really, I don't think they've really considered them a possibility, but at the end of the day, there are persons of interest. And the problem now is that there are people trying to silence Heather and make it difficult for her to continue advocating for her father-in-law. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail, because I will say that she is engaged in what seems to be a legal battle. A person who we've discussed before on the weekly remind here on the YouTube channel has filed a restraining order against Heather, and this is what I think is a ploy to try to silence her from getting to the truth. Now, what is remarkably odd in this case is there are people that are involved in James's case that possibly are involved in another case out there in the Joshua Tree area in California. And it just seems to be when Heather starts connecting the dots to this case and starts connecting the dots to this other case, it seems now all of a sudden they want to silence Heather. Now, I don't know if you know, if you've watched Heather or if you've been on the Justice for James Facebook page or seen her videos. She is a very strong person. I have joked before that there are two people that I've met in this business that I would want on my case if I ended up missing, Scarlett Campbell and Heather Escalante. And Heather is one of those people that she just does not give up, and she needs your support. And what I'm hoping that we can do is, if anybody knows of a person who is a lawyer, who does law, might be able to help in her case, maybe do it for pro bono, because she is battling someone trying to silence her. And it's not law enforcement. This is somebody who is a person of interest. I mean, I'm not going to name them right now because, again, I don't want to put any more added pressure on Heather and her cause. But again, they're trying to silence Heather from bringing up the possibility of this person and a group of people being involved in James's case. And so I wanted to mention it here because it's important that you guys know that it's hard enough when you're looking for a missing person or a person that was missing and it's now, it's very hard for people to come forward. I can tell you that it's very hard for people to want to talk about a case, or whether it's fear or whether it's or just because they don't think it's their problem or their fight. You know, they don't want to get involved. What makes it worse is when a family is doing all of the fighting and now they're trying to shut the family down. Now, see, that's the problem. And that can't be allowed, because no one else is speaking for James except for Heather and the family. And she's done all of the legwork herself, tirelessly. And I told her over the weekend that if this happens and God forbid she loses this legal battle she's going through, it's going to hurt what she does. So as we do for everyone, as we've done for Scarlett Campbell and the Will Polk April Jones case, and in other cases, we're going to be the voice. If Heather needs a voice, we're going to do that. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're come a point in this country where everybody is being silenced. And that's another argument, another show, another topic that we don't cover here. But people that are trying to find out the truth cannot be silenced. That's not, it's not right. It's bad enough that Facebook blocks these families from reporting what they hear, and these are facts, okay? Nothing that's not been said in the James Escalante case has been conjecture or fodder. It's all been fact. And trying to shut Heather down because she's speaking truth to power and she's speaking facts is irresponsible, and it shouldn't be allowed. So if anybody out there is a lawyer or may know a lawyer, email me, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com, or hit me up on Facebook. Anything we can do to help Heather out, I think would be appreciated, and she needs all the help to fight this battle and continue being a voice for James, because again, like I said, no one else is doing it, and we have far too many of these cases where nobody else is speaking for them. And the mere fact that someone's trying to shut her down and get her to stop doing what she's doing, silencing her, whether it's an intimidation, I honestly think that this is a battle that she's going to win. But the mere fact that they're trying to do it is just sickening. And if we can do anything to help spread the word, we're going to continue to do that, by God. And if anybody knows anyone out there that can help Heather, please give them a call. At any rate, if anybody has any information on the crime committed against this man, James Escalante, if you have any information at all, please call the homicide department there at 760-844-0558. Again, that's 760-844-0558. If you need to, you can remain anonymous. There is a $5,000 reward, cash money, for any information that leads to an arrest in the homicide of James Escalante. When we come back after this brief commercial, we are going to get into what's on tap this week with the Weekly Remind and the Grimm Truth Podcast. We'll be right back. Throughout our history, there have been moments where people had to stand up for what's right. People from all walks of life standing together to answer a call for one common cause. Today, another call must be answered. A call to help the missing. A call to stand with the families. Guardians that will help turn these families' cries for help into loud, roaring voices. Voices of change. We need guardians to join our ranks to support these families, lift them up, be one loud voice, a voice for change, a voice for the voiceless. Are you ready? If you're interested in becoming a Grimm Guardian, all you have to do is email me, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. That's Grimm with 2 M's. We are looking for volunteers that will help with case management, that are going to help bring cases to our attention, help families of the missing. A lot of times families don't know what to do. There is no playbook for this. They don't know that you don't have to wait 48 hours to report someone missing, or what there's no playbook. We want people to come together to volunteer any time that they have to help us help other families, and we want to grow this group of people that we have. We're at 3,200 members. We're constantly growing, and we need to keep that growth and that momentum going forward, and getting like-minded people that like Heather Escalante, Scarlett Campbell, Marilyn McAllister, those who have been through the ringer when it comes to fighting for their missing loved one. These people that are willing to step up and give some time to help those who have a similar similar case, similar. It's like a fraternity. It's a fraternity that no one wants to be in, and we need as many guardians as possible to help those who are trying to find their missing loved ones. Volunteer time. We do have several volunteers that have emailed me already, and I will be getting with you guys Friday. Be contacting you individually and getting you on board so you can help us continue to be a voice for the voiceless in search of the truth. Coming up this week on the podcast, we are going to be discussing the cases of Michael Hawley Jr. and Forrest Lavelle Anderson, also known as Wolf. Now, we did a story on Michael Hawley Jr. On the podcast before. He went missing from Taylor, Michigan, after having a verbal discussion with his girlfriend at a friend's house. They were kicked out of the friend's house. They walked. It was snowing that night. It was very the conditions were terrible, and then Michael has not been heard from since. The problem with this is that we believe there are two persons of interest that might have done something to Michael, and the detectives are working that case. However, the two persons of interest are not cooperating with the investigation and have lawyered up. And it's very important that as we do a second podcast on Michael, in the hopes that we can get some brave people to come forward, and we believe that there are other people out there that know what happened to Michael. We believe that wholeheartedly that there's somebody out there that can help bring him home. Michael's been missing since February the 14th, 2007. He's 5'7" tall. He was 130 pounds at the time of his disappearance, with brown hair and brown eyes. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Michael Hawley Jr., please call 1-800-SPEAK-UP. Again, that's 1-800-SPEAK-UP, and please let them know anything. We're looking for anybody that has information as to things going on in Michael's life the week before he went missing, and actually days. Now, and we've talked about this in the podcast, and we'll go into it. He was savagely beaten by the father of the girl he was dating, and these guys are gang affiliated. And Michael had made comments that he believed that if the father got a hold of him again, he wasn't going to make it out alive. And it's quite possible that took place. So we'll be covering a second episode of Michael Hawley Jr. And then our second case profile this week is going to be that of Forrest Lavelle Anderson, a.k.a. Wolf. He's from Caddo Parish. I hope I said that right, Louisiana. This guy is he was called just a complete gentleman. He's very helpful to folks. He has a huge, believe it or not, a huge following of people who would see him on the street. He would say hello. He would treat people with just respect and kindness, and he has a huge following. And it's very important that we get information on Wolf. There is a theory that we're going to discuss in the podcast episode. We have two advocates that are really fighting for answers to Wolf's case, and we're going to be getting into that. So Forrest Lavelle Anderson from Caddo Parish, Louisiana. He went missing July 12th, 2020. He was 6 foot inches. He was 6 foot even, 160 pounds. He had a beard. He just an all-out great guy. He had his demons like everybody else, but he treated everybody he came into with loads of respect, and doesn't deserve to be missing, and also deserves to be found. So if you have any information on his whereabouts, or you have any tips that may help us tell his story, you can call the parish sheriff's office at 318-675-2170. Again, that's 318-675-2170. He also has a Facebook page. It's called Justice for Wolf. So that's the number 4, Justice, the number 4 Wolf Facebook group, and search that in Facebook group, join. You can also slide me a message on Facebook as well, or email me, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. So those are the cases that we will be covering this week on episode 19 of the podcast. We're episode 19, folks. We are literally 16 downloads away from 10,000 downloads for the podcast, which is a huge accomplishment, which we will be celebrating. I believe we'll break that. We could break it tomorrow. As I looked today, 10,000 downloads, and that's huge. Coming up on the weekly remind, we are going to cover the case of Ashley Anthony. Now, Ashley Anthony was found dead, hanging in a tree. And this is a case that bothers me. And it bothers me because there's a lot of people involved. There's a huge circle. This is a beautiful woman who her life was stolen from her. And I have talked with her mother, and we are going to be discussing this case and the details of the case, which I don't want to get into right now on this program because it's lengthy and there's a lot of information. So we're going to get into it. So we're going to be covering the case of Ashley Anthony. This case is widely followed on social media, and it's a case that needs answers. So we are going to cover it. It is not a missing persons case, but she is a homicide victim, and this family is getting no help whatsoever. And we need to step in when we can. And I talked to the mother a couple of weeks ago after interviewing her, and said that we would profile this case on the weekly remind only because it's a story that needs to be told, and this family needs help. The rewind case of the week is going to be that of Tyquan Smith Sims. Now, Tyquan's case we covered recently back in episode 13 of the podcast. And this case, the kid just disappeared from a hospital. He was allowed to walk out of the hospital, basically. This whole thing could have been avoided. And we are going to be talking with Tyquan's mom and asking her to give us an update on what's going on in the case, and what's going on, what's not going on, what can we do? What can we do as a group to get this case moving forward? I think there's a lot of underlying problems with this case when it comes to lack of help from law enforcement, lack of information. I mean, for crying out loud, if you listen to the podcast, the video footage hadn't been turned over weeks and weeks after he went missing, the video footage from the hospital. So a lot going on in that case. So again, we're going to be discussing Ashley Anthony on the weekly remind. That's on Friday, and Tyquan Smith Sims will be our case remind of the week. As we move forward and we continue to grow as a group, Grimm Media, the Grimm Truth Podcast, which is our flagship for what we do. I'm humbled by the fact that we're here in August. We started this thing in January, and we're well over 3,000 members. We're literally 19 subscribers away from 600 on YouTube, and we're almost at 10,000 downloads for the podcast, which we more than likely will break 10,000 tomorrow. Also, next week will be our 20th podcast, and next week I'm doing something special. We are going to be doing, I will tell you now, we are doing a third installment of the Christopher Sanders case. It just so happens that next week is the anniversary, 4-year anniversary of Christopher Sanders. And if you haven't been paying attention, I have made sure I've talked to everybody regarding Christopher Sanders' case. Christopher Sanders' case was a case I had followed long before I started doing podcasts. I came upon a Facebook page that Karen Knuckles Phillips, one of his closest friends, had done, and I joined. I was interested. This case had been calling to me while I was sitting behind a desk working another job. And I had always said if I ever did a podcast for missing persons cases, I would cover Chris's case. I've done that. And in the 8 months that I have worked on Chris's case off and on, one thing constantly keeps hitting me is that someone's lying about what happened to Chris. And I have asked to speak with Cody Penny. He has messaged me. He obviously does not like me. And this isn't about being liked or not liked. This isn't about calling people out. It's about getting to the truth. There's a family who doesn't know what happened to Chris. And then we've got police officers who are sworn to serve and protect, who have done next to nothing to investigate Chris's case. Several weeks ago, I contacted the Monahans Police Department and asked Captain Quintana to hit the reset button on Chris's case and start investigating from scratch. And I was told, and we played it right here on the Grimm Truth Podcast YouTube channel. It's the episode called Truth Bomb, where Captain Quintana told me, and I quote, we are not looking into anything unless we have leads. That's what he said. So this is troubling because 4 years next week for Chris Sanders, 4 years that his mom Sandy has had to wonder what happened to her son, and the family is at odds. Now, I've talked to Angela. I've talked to Angela twice, and she's Chris's wife. And there's a lot of stuff going into that case. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. And we're going to get into that next week on our 20th episode of Chris Sanders. We're going to do Chris Sanders installment 3, and we're going to get into a lot of stuff. Now, I hope that Cody Penny would at least give me a 10-minute phone call, if that, for 5 questions that I have to ask regarding this case. There's questions that the cops are not asking. I told Cody this over the weekend. I said that the cops aren't looking into his case. At this point, I don't care what the cops didn't ask him, because he wasn't interviewed by the police. They did not interview him like they would normal missing persons case. I have to talk to Angela. It's time for me to talk to Cody, and that hasn't happened yet. So I'm gonna keep digging until I find the answers. But I wanted to let everybody know that next week we'll have a special announcement regarding our studio here, and also we are going to be doing the 3rd installment of Christopher Sanders. It will only be this episode will be dedicated only to Chris, because there's going to be a lot of information, and I didn't want to make it really long with adding a second profile. So we're going to be doing our 20th episode as we began our first episode, and that's going to be about Christopher Sanders, aka Dog, missing from Moynihan's, Texas. And just so we get this covered, he went missing August the 13th, 2017, at the age of 40. He's 5'11". He was 190 pounds, reddish blonde hair, blue eyes, tattoos. The man would not go for a walk in the Texas heat. I don't care who tells me that line of BS. I'm not following it. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't believe it. So we'll be covering that case, and we will, as the week goes on and as we start next week, we will profile different bits and pieces of what we're going to get into as we profile Chris's case yet again for the 3rd time, because it needs to be done, because no one else is doing anything. Hopefully we can put pressure on Monahan's PD and hopefully the Texas Rangers to step in and do something so that this family can get the answers that it needs so they can bring Chris home. That's going to wrap this edition up of Grimm Media News. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching. If you want to become a Grimm Guardian, please email me, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. Again, that's stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. My email link will be in the description below. If you know a person, or if you have a missing loved one and you would like their case profiled on the Grimm Truth Podcast, the link, there will all be a link in the description below. You can also check us out. You can email us at stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com, or go to our website, www.thegrimmtruth.com. Again, the link will be in the description below. We have an online form where you can go online, check us out, and fill out our online intake form. And one of my volunteers or I will be contacting you, setting up interview time so we can begin working on your case. That's going to wrap it up here. Again, thank you very much for watching. As always, I'm your host, Steve Stone. This has been Green Media News. We are the media for the missing. Have a good night.